There are 30 million people within about 2 meters of sea level, and a tsunami here, of course, would be absolutely devastating.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, where we'll be discussing immensely tragic events that cause global periods of collective mourning.
There's coughing, there's sickness, there's people with their feet festering. It's the most extraordinary scene I've ever seen in my life, and I hope I never see anything like it again.
The death of Diana.
There were a lot of us that were actually volunteering to work and wanted to be part of it. And London just had this feeling that was just so different.
Diana, Princess of Wales, joined the royal family after marrying Charles III in 1981. As time went on, their relationship soured, and the pair got divorced in 1996. That didn't stop the public from adoring Diana. In Paris, 1997, tragedy struck, and Diana died in a horrific car crash alongside boyfriend Dodi Fayed. Investigations found that her limo driver was intoxicated and therefore claimed he was responsible.
Many vital questions have never been properly pursued, let alone answered. And that appears to be no accident.
However, many still blame the paparazzi team that chased the limo into the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. She only lived to 36 and was mourned across the globe. Over 2.5 billion people watched her funeral, which was approximately 40% of all people alive at the time.
Since last Sunday's dreadful news, we have seen throughout Britain and around the world an overwhelming expression of sadness at Diana's death. We have all been trying in our different ways to cope.
Pearl Harbor.
While the dive bombers hammered the airfields, the torpedo planes descended to an altitude of a few dozen feet and took dead aim at Battleship Row.
In 1937, Imperial Japan began its full-scale invasion of China. After Germany invaded Poland, the conflict merged with World War II. In 1941, their resources were dwindling, and America was looking threatening. As such, Japan launched a surprise attack on the U.S. Navy base at Pearl Harbor, hoping it would demoralize the Americans, cripple their fleet, and allow a quick victory.
あそこには有力な対空砲陣地があるはずやが、一発も敵からんな。それに真珠湾上空にも敵戦闘機の姿は見当たりません。
It had none of these effects. The U.S. was distraught, but eager to retaliate. While the Allied powers mourned the losses of Pearl Harbor, the fascists feared the revenge they sought. The Axis powers fell to the Allies by 1945, with their overextension being a major factor.
Here's the man who tried to warn us. If it's any satisfaction to you, Leighton, you were right.
Sir, it's no satisfaction to me whatsoever.
Boston Marathon bombings.
It turned out the evidence that would solve the case had been collected before the first bomb exploded that Monday. The FBI could travel back in time through the lenses of dozens of security cameras up and down Boylston.
In 2013, two Islamic extremist brothers detonated 2 pressure cooker bombs at the Boston Marathon's finish line. Hundreds were injured, and 3 people lost their lives. The culprits tried escaping by killing a police officer and robbing a car. They ended up in a shootout, and one brother got ran over by the other in the commotion.
If you're just tuning in right now, there has been what appears to be a major development in what has been a 19-hour search for a 19-year-old bombing suspect with a marathon bombing.
He later died of his injuries, and the other was found hiding in a boat. He was convicted and is currently being held on death row in Colorado. Tons of people from across the globe gave their condolences to the victims, including world leaders from almost every nation.
Boston is strong, and we're not going to let something like this stop us.
Tohoku Earthquake and Tsunami.
This place symbolizes the tragedy more than anywhere. An entire town wiped out by the force of nature.
Earthquakes are terrifyingly common in Japan, which lies at the intersection of multiple tectonic plates. The most devastating recorded earthquake in Japan came in 2011, which obliterated the Tohoku region. The earthquake triggered a tsunami, which did extreme amounts of damage. Average wave heights were roughly 130 feet, causing thousands of deaths.
And that wall of water is primarily the cause of a death toll that is in the hundreds, but is certain to rise, with 88,000 people in Japan still unaccounted for.
The ordeal then caused even more horrors after it triggered a meltdown of the Fukushima nuclear power plant. It was the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. Worldwide, billions watched as the horrific domino effect swept across Japan. Roughly 163 countries offered aid, and over 520 billion yen was donated.
It has been 4 months since you suddenly disappeared. I've been wondering why this happened. One day, we will return here to live, looking at the sea that took you from us.
Las Vegas shooting.
I mean, they're hiding under the bleachers and the stanchions and anywhere they could, and everyone's telling us to run as fast as you can.
In 2017, Las Vegas fell victim to the deadliest mass shooting by a single perpetrator in U.S. history. A 64-year-old man targeted attendees of the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival. It had approximately 22,000 guests, and 60 of them lost their lives. The shooter started firing from his hotel room, then took his own life after roughly 10 minutes of chaos.
The Mandalay Bay Hotel is on the southern end of Las Vegas's famous Strip. The road was locked down as the police secured the area. The nearby international airport was closed and flights stopped for a few hours.
Years later, his motivation remains almost entirely unknown. The Islamic State said they were behind it, but there's no evidence to confirm this. Figures from across the globe gave their condolences, including world leaders and prominent political figures.
Today, those desperate for some movement on gun control voiced their frustration. Senator Elizabeth Warren tweeted that thoughts and prayers were not enough.
7/7.
I decided to stay on the bus. And everything that kind of followed from then is these sliding door moments where if I make a different decision, everything goes in a different direction.
On the 7th of July in 2005, the UK fell victim to one of its worst terrorist attacks ever. It consisted of 4 coordinated attacks in London during rush hour. 3 homemade bombs exploded in the London Underground and a 4th on a bus. The culprits all died with the explosions, which also took 52 innocent lives and injured 784 more.
The information vacuum in the hours and days that followed meant that the chaos caused by a terrorist attack was multiplied.
It was perpetrated by Islamic extremists who created videotape statements explaining their motivations. 32 of the victims were British, while the rest came from nations across the globe. A decade later, a couple was apprehended for planning an anniversary attack. This thankfully fell through, largely because of incriminating tweets one of them made.
First official confirmation that many people had died in all 4 bombs came that afternoon.
It was not a good place, our house at that time. So we didn't go to bed that night. We spent the whole night phoning and phoning.
Titanic's sinking.
By the dim light of oil lanterns, the Titanic's officers kept back the cowards and helped women and children to safety.
The most well-known maritime disaster in history is the RMS Titanic. It was built to be unsinkable, which meant its owners gave little thought to maximizing safety. It sailed with only 20 lifeboats, which could only hold half of all passengers. Under the cover of night, the Titanic was going at scarily fast speeds to impress the New Yorkers when they arrived.
Right in the first few seconds of the ship plunging, the water pressure blew the mast back and slammed it back into that position. And you can see where it's actually bent, just like you'd bend a Coke can.
As we all know, it ended in tragedy when the ship came in collision with an enormous iceberg. Approximately 1,500 people died out of the 2,224 souls on board. Since then, maritime safety has improved significantly to prevent a repeat of the disaster.
Afterward, the 700 people in the boats had nothing to do but wait. Wait to die, wait to live.
Hurricane Katrina.
As the afternoon progresses, water continues to pour into the city. The New Orleans Bowl is filling up.
Hurricanes are one of nature's most terrifying creations. In 2005, states in the southeast of the United States were decimated by Hurricane Katrina. At the time, it stood alone as the costliest hurricane in history. It caused $125 billion worth of damage, hitting New Orleans particularly hard.
You know, you can see the water starting to slowly seep in. And then the hole got bigger. And then it got bigger, and then the water just started coming in and pouring in.
80% of the city was flooded, and thousands in New Orleans alone were displaced. In total, more than 1 million people were displaced in the U.S. Afterwards, tons of countries donated millions of dollars in aid. Around 1,400 fatalities were confirmed, with a further 652 people remaining missing. Rwandan Genocide.
Sir, I cannot leave my family. I must take them with me. It is not safe here. There are Tutsi spies everywhere.
I cannot take all these people.
The act of genocide is always horrific, being one of the worst things humans can do to each other. In recent decades, we've developed the technology for the whole world to know when genocide is committed. This meant that when the Hutu-led Rwandan government began systematically killing the Tutsi ethnic group, the whole world was shedding tears.
Radio Rwanda broadcast calls day and night for the Hutus to go out and kill Tutsis. And the Hutus were told by their own leaders that if they didn't join the killers, they would join the dead.
More than 500,000 people died in roughly 100 days of violence. Unfortunately, the international community failed to prevent the genocide. Once violence began, the UN pulled out the majority of its peacekeeping forces. The humanitarian organizations that remained were beyond brave, trying their best to mitigate damages. Tragically, it was not enough to stop the spread of violence.
At Mugunga camp last July, the roads were lined with the corpses of cholera victims. Now there are permanent water supplies, restaurants, video cinemas.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into settings and switch on your notifications.
9/11.
One after the next, ambulances raced over St. Vincent's Hospital, a level 1 trauma center, the closest to the World Trade Center, was called on to do what it does best.
On September 11, 2001, Al-Qaeda launched its largest attack on the U.S. ever. 4 planes were hijacked, then 2 crashed directly into the World Trade Center. A third hit the Pentagon, while passengers revolted on the 4th, causing it to crash in a field in Pennsylvania. Almost 3,000 people died, and thousands more were injured.
I was down on B1. The shaft's there at Buckland. There's going to be people trapped in those elevators.
Jeez. Just took us an hour to get up to 30 in Tower 1. I didn't want us over in 2.
Perhaps most people who are old enough are able to tell you exactly where they were when this happened. The rest of the world was stunned, watching in silence as the horrors unfolded. It had profound consequences for the entire globe, leading to the global war on terror.
Again, goes right back to resiliency, seeing those messages of hope and remembrance on this very tall column that's still standing strong.
Were there any deeply tragic events we forgot to mention? Leave your suggestions in the comments section.
It was a scene out of a movie. The people running from downtown, running up the streets, no shoes on their feet. Some people had their shirts were ripped off.